Wally West vs. the World, or at least the Bats, by Evermoon 2097. Chapter 5, Duke. Duke. Hey man, is it okay if we just hang out today? Honestly, I have no idea what to test, but Tim said it's okay if I just want to get to know you better instead. Is that cool? Yeah, of course, dude. I'd love to just hang out. Duke. Cool. Do you want to meet at Coventry Mall? Maybe check out the arcade? You're the boss. 1. Asterisk. Exclamation point. See you at 3. Duke. Thumbs up. Wally let out a cheer as Duke made his way towards the strength test game. The teen smirked, testing the weight of the mallet. A little girl was watching off to the side, chewing happily on a candy rope. Duke shot her a grin as he reared back, smacking the mallet into the target. The weight launched up, ringing loudly against the bell at the top. A roll of tickets started spilling out, piling at Duke's feet, as he soaked in Wally's applause. With a laugh, the teen plucked the tickets off the ground, draping them like a shawl around his neck. They joined the coil atop his head, tickets framing him like a crown. "Bow before me, peasant," Duke joked, waving his hands regally. Wally snickered, taking a video as the teen pranced around for a moment before moving to untangle them all. He sent it to Dick. His boyfriend responded back with a video of Bart spinning violently around a set of bars, the metal wobbling dangerously at the speed. Dick had been tight-lipped about how exactly his cousin had convinced him to run a week-long acrobatics boot camp for Young Justice, but at least they seemed to be having fun. Wally glanced up as Duke crouched down in front of the kid, passing her the now coiled tickets. "You don't want them, mister?" she asked, eyeing them hungrily. Duke shook his head. "Nah, me and my friend here are just having fun." She smiled broadly, giggling as she ran back towards the prize counter with the gift. Wally shouldered him. Okay, you proved your point. You can pick the next game." Duke rolled his eyes good-naturedly, gesturing towards the air hockey table. "Think you can handle it?" "Oh, you're forgetting who you're talking to," he answered with a confident smirk. That confidence was misplaced. Turns out, Duke was good. Really good. Must have been those Bat Kid reflexes. And so, Wally maybe cheated. Duke's eyes narrowed, as Wally's hand sped across the table, just a little too quickly. "Hey!" The redhead smiled innocently, launching the puck back from whence it came, without a glance. "Okay, so we're playing that game then." Duke cracked his neck, bouncing on the balls of his feet. His eyes glowed brightly in the arcade's light. Wally smirked. Now this was a game. Things only got worse from there. Wally didn't know how exactly Duke was doing it, but the teen always seemed to know where the puck was coming from, blocking it just in time, even when Wally launched it at super speeds that frankly should have destroyed the small plastic chip. Duke still blocked it just in time. At least Duke wasn't having any luck scoring on him. Now, that would have been embarrassing. The stalemate continued until one rapid block from Wally sent the puck flying out of the rink, ricocheting off a pillar and almost hitting an employee. The two were kicked out. Duke made Wally pay for his mistake. The price was a plate of cheeseburgers and fries. "I gotta give it to you, man." Wally started, taking a sip of his milkshake. "You are faster than I thought." He reached for his second burger. Duke blushed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Thanks?" "If we're being honest, though, I was using my powers too." He whispered the last part. Wally's eyes widened over his food. "Really? Wait, I thought you just had light powers." "I do. It's weird," Duke mumbled, taking a bite from a pretzel. The speedster frowned at the way his shoulders hunched. Admittedly, Wally didn't know much about the teen. He'd only joined after Bruce had returned, when Wally and Dick had already moved back to Bloodhaven. The two hadn't really spent much time around each other. Certainly not the time Wally spent adjusting to the rest of the family. "Well, don't leave me hanging, man." Meta to meta. He offered a smile. If Duke turned him down, he wasn't gonna push. But if the boy did want to share his powers, Wally certainly wasn't gonna stop him. The teen smiled. Sure. I can kinda see into the future? In the past? Just a little, he whispered. Wally nearly spat out his drink. Wait. How the hell do light powers translate to seeing through time? He hissed, quickly glancing around the court. At least the two of them were tucked in the corner, mostly out of view and earshot of the rest of the mall. Duke shrugged with a dry smile. Tim tried to explain it. He guessed it was seeing the ghosts of where light was or will be, if that makes sense. Wally balked. Dude, I don't think that's how light works. And I'm saying that as someone who can move faster than it. I don't know, man, but that's what it feels like. I can only do it for recent or soon-to-be stuff, though. Duke dipped his pretzel in honey mustard, happily taking bites as Wally got lost in his thoughts. He thought back to the physics classes he'd taken, racking his brain for anything that could remotely explain the power beyond magic. Ghosts of light? So, kinda like how we're seeing the past when we look into space, he clarified, remembering the tangent Dr. Clement had gone on. Duke paused mid-chew, looking at Wally like he had lost his head. Like how we're what when we look into space? He repeated. Oh, right, you know how the sun's so far away that it takes 8 minutes for the light to reach us? Wally gestured wildly while he talked, imagining a diagram in the air. Duke nodded. Well, extrapolate that to the rest of the space. Stars are dozens of light years away, so what we're seeing when we look up is really how they were maybe 50 years ago? So, is it kinda like that? Duke was nodding his head absent-mindedly. Kinda. Only these ghosts came and went a long time ago. Cool idea, though. Wally hummed in acknowledgement, still mulling it over in his head. His knee bounced up and down. A few minutes passed before Duke spoke again. Don't see a lot of stars in Gotham, he mused. Wally glanced up, following the teen's line of sight. The sun was painting a thin layer of clouds, a light orange through the mall's roof. It was almost sunset. Wally quirked his mouth, suddenly getting an idea. Yeah, well, it's a shame. You want to go stargazing? Duke glanced up. Like, outside of Gotham? Now? It's not like you have to work, he replied with a cheeky smile, remembering Dick's worried day shift rants. Duke glanced between him and the skylight again. We'd have to go pretty far. Dude, Wally deadpanned, gesturing to himself. You're with a speedster. I'm not far from anywhere. That got a laugh out of the teen, finishing off his pretzel. You serious, man? Wally shrugged, also getting to his feet. You tell me. You're the boss today. Duke seemed to think it over for another second before shaking his head. You know what? Screw it. Let's go. Always wanted to see the stars. Hell yeah! Wally cheered, throwing their trash away. Come on, let's head outside. I know just the spot. Duke shakily dismounted from Wally's back, stumbling a little as the world stopped swaying. Now I see why Tim doesn't let Bart run him places, he said with a groan. The redhead laughed. Trust me, Bart's worse. He tried to run across a lake once, tripped on a turtle, and ended up skipping like a stone across it. Wally righted himself, stretching out his back as he gestured in front of him. Duke Thomas, welcome to Laramie, Wyoming. The teen straightened up, glancing around. It's flat? Really, that was kind of the most Duke could make of it. The land stretched out as far as the eye could see. Sandy green grass covered everything that wasn't road or a house. Farm buildings dotted his vision, with what looked like an airport not far from them. Clearly, this place was a very different beast than Gotham. He turned back to Wally, who seemed to snap out of a daze, hand tightening around his forearm. You're not wrong. Sorry, I normally only come here for stargazing, or to get away from people. Forgot what it looked like in the day. Duke's mouth quirked up at the confession. He glanced up at the sky, now much bluer than it was in Gotham. Thick clouds dotted the sky, with more in the distance. Well, considering we just lost 2 hours in time zones, I think we've got a while before night hits." He thought he heard Wally curse under his breath. "How do you hear about this place anyway, man? Just stumble into it?" Wally shook his head, starting to walk towards the denser part of town in the distance. Don't tell him I told you this, but Jason was in this play when he was in high school." "No, Jason, the most dramatic D&D bard alive, was a theater kid? I'm shocked." Duke replied dryly, trying to imagine a young Jason dressed up like a farmer. The older man snickered. "Yeah, you should have seen Dick when Jason played Colonel Mustard. Well, anyway, it was this play based on a true story and stuff that took place in Laramie. Mentioned the stars and stuff. So Jason had me and Dick take a trip here. He said it was for method acting, but I think he was just curious." He was smiling softly at the memory. Truthfully, Duke could barely imagine the man, gun-carrying, cursing, and lightly maiming as he was, paying a visit to a small town for a play. But hey, weirder things have happened. Duke let his gaze wander as they neared the town, eyes drifting over homes and gas stations. It was so clear here. "Clear?" Wally asked when Duke voiced the thought. "You mean like pollution-wise?" "No, well, yes, but that's not what I meant. It's like things in Gotham are almost blurry sometimes. Like there's just so many lights overlapping that it feels kind of like a haze. Here, though, I don't know if clear's the right word. Maybe just empty?" Wally hummed thoughtfully. "I mean, Laramie is pretty empty, aside from the college. I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty chill day to day. Maybe since it's more still, there's fewer ghosts? Or that they fade faster." Duke shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. If only there was a better way to sift through them. Find the important." Out of the corner of his eye, an echo flashed. Bright white and black overlapping. Duke jerked to a spot, eyes fixed on a brief sight. Wally peeked in front of him. "Duke, are you alright?" He shook his head, snapping out of the daze, but not taking his eyes off of where he'd seen the echo. Sorry, thought I saw something." "A ghost?" "Yeah, normally I have to try to see them, though. This one just popped out at me." Wally quirked his head, following Duke's gaze. The two took a moment, taking in the empty road. A sign peeked above them, announcing it as First Street. They should just ignore it, move on, ignore the random echo in the middle of nowhere, and keep exploring the town, until the sun set enough for them to see the stars they had come here for. But something about the ghost unnerved Duke. It felt important. "Come on, I want to see if I can see more," Duke announced, walking further down the road without waiting for an answer. He focused on the energy that pulsed behind his chest, letting it flare up just behind his eyes. When Duke opened his eyes, the world was alight with colors. The dusty browns of modern-day Laramie were now muted, blurring shapes hazy just under the surface. Wisps of light twisted in the air. Duke focused on the nearest one, vaguely aware of Wally approaching behind him. The echo rippled, its edges melting into the air. Duke frowned. He'd never seen one so small. Normally, they encompass an area, but this one was barely a fragment. He crouched down to it, letting its shape color his vision. When he looked around this time, he had to resist flinching away from the crowd suddenly filling the street. Their shapes varied, faces and clothing melding into each other. They looked like walking shadows, amorphous blobs shifting as a crowd. One short blob swung between its parent's arms. A taller shape held a white sign in front of them, black lines forming and slipping across its surface, unreadable. Each one, however, had a crest of yellow wrapped around their arms, the color bright against their fuzzy forms. Duke couldn't tear his eyes away from the crowd. Roughly 100 humans parading through the small town. They followed behind a banner, its edges clear and defined. Before he knew what he was doing, Duke was running forward, slipping through the echo and sending the world back into its usual color. Wally caught him as he stumbled, gripping his upper arm. "Whoa! What did you see?" "A parade?" Duke breathed out, inexplicably excited at the revelation. "Or a protest or something. Come on, there's a banner." He ran ahead of the speedster, not noticing the thoughtful expression on Wally's face. Call it curiosity, call it intuition, call it the detective's desperation for answers that Batman had drilled into him. Duke needed to follow this parade. His power bubbled up again, ghost vision slipping like a mask over his eyes. A moment later, Wally was jogging beside him, easily keeping pace. Good thing, too, since in his haste to find another echo, Duke didn't even notice the 3 times he almost ran into pedestrians. Wally carefully yanked him out of the way each time, shooting an apology behind him. Duke slid out of Wally's grip and down a side street, pausing once it opened back into the main road. Before him sat Laramie High School, an echo shimmering at the corner. Duke let it wash over him, breathing out as the hazy shape of a band bloomed in front of him, bright yellow bands flickering among the band, the lulling sound of their music resonating through the vision. He gasped, ears latching onto the tune. Sound? As far as he knew, only the most recent and horrible visions ever had sound, and yet this one, some parade preserved in old echoes, still clung to its music. The parade marched before him, its crowd now seemingly doubled in size. Where there weren't armbands, flags waved, some yellow, some shivering in multicolored haze. White flashing signs still bounced in front of people. The banner remained stark in the distance. Through the music, Duke thought he could even make out a few words. Hate has, never, remember, no. Duke reached towards the band, stepping out of the echo. The parade faded away. He felt Wally's hand on his shoulder. "Dude, are you sure you want to keep doing this?" Wally asked warily, his gaze shifting around. He was panting softly. Duke's response was heavy in his throat. Admittedly, the excitement at the mystery had washed away. The dull words of the crowd rang heavy in his mind. A weight had settled in his chest, like this was something he wasn't meant to see. Every kid in Gotham knew the feeling. That sinking in your stomach, as you turn a corner, become witness to something that was never meant to happen. An urge to run, to get to safety, rang through his bones. He wanted to hide away from the horror. But he was the signal, a hero, the one that Gotham was meant to turn to when something bad happened. And something bad had happened here. Duke needed to figure out what. There's a banner, it's clear. Everything else in the echo is hazy, but that's clear. I need to know what it says, he said, resolutely. Wally looked like he was holding back a sigh. Okay, man, I think I know a good spot. Come on. This time, Wally let himself be led, glancing around at the empty streets. He tried to imagine the crowd, hundreds of people with faces and hopes and dreams. Yet now, all that remained were shapeless forms and a banner they walked behind. Eventually, Wally stopped in front of a building. Glancing up at the building, he turned back to the street. Okay, I think here's your spot. See anything? Duke blinked back into ghost vision, raking his eyes across the road, eyeing the buildings. A ghostly echo floated in the middle of the street. Duke tilted his head towards it, glancing at Wally through the muted haze. Wally seemed to understand, standing behind him, as Duke stopped at the middle of the road. As the echo enveloped Duke, he felt his jaw drop. The small crowd of 100 people was no more, now positively filling the streets. 300, 400, 500 people were making their way down the street towards Duke. Their faces may have been hazy, but bright yellow bands gleamed across the crowd, bouncing behind their eyes. A great white banner flew above them, undamaged by age and crisp in the air. Black letters stood stark against the sheet. Remember Matt Shepard. As if on cue, Words began to shift into clarity. The signs in people's hands took on clean, boxy text, their context suddenly clear. With a roar, the people's voices called out, echoing the words. Hate is not a small-town value. Straight, but not stupid. No hate crimes in Wyoming. It was just a moment, a second of perfect clarity ringing through the vision. Duke took a startled step back, stumbling into Wally. It's a protest, he said breathlessly. A hate crime. Someone, Matt Shepard, he babbled. He felt Wally relax behind him. I knew it. Duke, I know what you're seeing. Come on, let's get out of the road. I'll explain everything, he said assuredly, comfortably holding his arms. Duke whirled around, scanning the man's face. Wally's jaw was set with purpose. Hurriedly, Duke nodded, still reeling from the revelation. Okay, it was a protest, a rally against a hate crime. Matt Shepard was likely the victim, and if remember was any indication, it was too late for him. Duke swallowed thickly. He followed Wally towards a diner, grabbing them a booth in the corner, and ordering plates of fries. Did you know him? Duke asked once the food arrived. Wally looked down at him in curiosity. Matt Shepard? Duke, I don't know how to tell you this, but that parade was from, 20 years ago. Duke was sent into a coughing fit, a fry going down the wrong pipe at Wally's words. 20, he choked out. My vision has never gone back that far. I don't think I've ever seen anything older than a few minutes. Wally shrugged helplessly. I don't know what to tell you, man. Remember that play Jason was in? It was of that hate crime. They made a play about a hate crime? Duke hissed, a bad taste in his mouth. The redhead made a seesaw gesture. Kinda more about the town's response, and what happened after. In memory of Matthew, you know? Okay, just tell me the full story. What exactly happened here? And so Wally did. Matthew Shepard, a 21-year-old gay man, was found tied to a fence, beaten and bloody, on October 8th, 1998. The redhead racked his brains, but suddenly couldn't recall much about the court and protests that followed, but that the town had come together around the incident, some in support, some in hate, and that his killers were imprisoned. Matthew died October 12th. That's horrible, Duke said, voice thick. Yeah, not a happy story, but it roused a lot of people into fighting for equal rights. That's something. Wally reasoned, eyes far away. The sun was setting outside the diner, Laramie being painted orange and gold. The clouds had moved in. Duke frowned, thinking the story over. No magic or anything? Not that I know of. Why? I'm trying to figure out why I can still see the echoes of it. Duke mumbled, only partially honest. He was curious about the why, but really, Wally hummed. It's kind of poetic, right? That the sharpest part of your visions were the banner? The one that says to remember. Duke quirked his head, eyes narrowing. Wally shrugged. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just the universe's way of remembering. Maybe stronger emotions leave stronger echoes. So the parade stuck around longer. Gotham's full of emotions, though. None of those have stuck around. Maybe you just haven't seen them. You said Gotham's kind of hazy, right? What if those echoes are just buried under the newer ones? Duke's eyes widened as he thought about it. Do you think I could see them? I don't see why not. You just have to look for them. Practice digging deeper. It'd probably help if you knew what to look for. Maybe check out old files to see if there's something you want to see. Wally said quickly, his mouth clearly getting away from him. But Duke was focused on something else. The fence. Do you think it's still around? The answer was no. It had been removed some time ago, leaving just an empty lot and a street sign. By the time the two reached the site, the murder site, the sun had set, a murky purple hanging overhead. There were no stars. As they neared the place, Duke could almost feel the emotion suffocating the place. The sight of countless pilgrimages, all in the name of mourning an innocent man. The air was heavy. The skies were dark. Duke forced himself forward. Maybe, just maybe... Wally's hand was warm against his shoulder. Are you sure about this? He nodded resolutely. Honestly, not sure what he was hoping to get out of this. It wasn't like there was anything more to the story. Matthew Shepard was dead and avenged. His killer's still in prison for life. Yet, Duke just had to see it. So, the two sat down, not far from the road, and Duke let his powers flow through him. When he opened his eyes, already washing in an echo, the fence wove itself in front of him, dark in the night. There was no body. Duke let out a pained sigh. He was too late. Wally leaned his shoulder against Duke, guessing what had happened. Hey, it's okay. There's nothing you could have done. I don't even know why I'm here, Duke admitted, feeling tears prick in his eyes. It was 18 years ago. It wasn't like I could save him or anything, but his voice broke. I thought maybe I could keep him company, make him a little less alone. Duke rubbed at his face, turning away from Wally. It was stupid. That's not stupid, Duke. I think it's incredibly kind of you. Duke shook his head. But I'm too late. He felt ridiculous, mourning a man he never knew, who died years before he was even born, who he only learned about a few hours ago. Wally was quiet for a moment, his gaze turning skyward. Yeah, sometimes you will be. Even you? Duke choked out. Yeah, even me. Speedsters, we're fast, but we can't be everywhere. We're always too late for something. The silence stretched. Duke turned his eyes to the dirt and the shadow the fence cast on it. How do you do it? Move on? He asked, hoarsely. He felt Wally shrug beside him. Everyone handles it differently. Me? I keep pushing myself. No one knows a speedster's limits, especially after my time in the Speed Force. I just gotta keep testing myself, seeing what more I can do, even if it's not much. If being a little faster means a few more people stay safe, then it's worth it. Duke was quiet, feeling his powers bubble beneath the surface. And Dick, Wally continued, he's always gone the inspiration route, trying to get people to help each other, even if they aren't in capes. For every person that's willing to help others, there's another spot in the world that's that much safer. I mean, that's how he got you, right? Duke smiled at the memory of his time at We Are Robin. He took a breath, glancing over at the empty foot of the fence. He felt Wally's eyes on his neck. I want to remember. I can see these moments, these stories. I want to be able to tell them. Duke clenched his fist in the dirt. He thought about the bodies lying broken in alleys, of the unmarked graves littering Bloodhaven's shores, of the nameless victims with wretched smiles peeling across their faces. Even if it's too late to save them, someone out there should know that they deserved better. I think that's a good goal, Wally said simply. Duke could feel his smile, suddenly realizing how he and Dick had become so close. Memory is a beautiful gift, but don't forget to live for yourself, too. You can remember the dead, but at the end of the day, you're the one who has to keep going. Duke nods, smiling at the older hero. He let his head tilt back, the weight of the day slipping off his shoulders. He gasped at the sky spread out before them. Stars, he breathed out. It was like someone had dumped glitter over the sky. The Milky Way seeped across the sky, light orange dusting between stars. His eyes drifted, tracing across the array of odd loops. A comet dashed across the sky. It was so big. Wally glanced up beside him, confused. The echo, Duke murmured, only half paying attention. This must have been what Matthew saw. Huh. Would you look at that? Wally smiled, green eyes imagining the view. Maybe the universe is remembering him too. Eventually, the shimmer faded from Duke's eyes, and the teen shoved the heels of his hands into his eyes. Oh, fuck. I never held it that long before. Wally patted him on the back, handing him one of the water bottles they'd brought with them. Duke didn't open his eyes, fumbling with the cap for a moment before downing half the bottle. He cracked his eyes open, squinting into the darkness. Though, with his powers, who knew what he was actually seeing? After a moment, Duke broke the silence. Thanks for bringing me here. The speedster smiled. Of course. I've been meaning to come back. Duke followed his gaze upward, wincing slightly at the thick layer of clouds overhead. Shame you didn't see any stars. Do you come here often? The weight settled in Wally's gut. Not in a few years. Now that I think about it, he recalled. Last time was before memories of the visit bubbled up. Dick wanted to visit again. We'd just lost Jason. Those few months felt like a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. Really, he'd only grieved the boy for a few months before his own disappearance. Then, suddenly, they were both back, alive and well. But some of that grief still sat heavy and buried in his gut. You knew him before? There was surprise in Duke's voice. Yeah, all the original Titans did. You know how Dick loves showing off his family. Duke's face turned a few shades darker. Probably remembering the party Dick had thrown in the tower when Beef finally let him introduce him to the team. He chuckled. After a beat. You've really been with this family for a while, huh? Got any tips for a newbie? Don't forget how to communicate, Wally answered automatically. I tell you, none of those bats know how to be upfront, I swear. Duke roared with laughter. I see it's not new then. Good to know. Yep. Wally popped the pea. They settled into an easy silence when Wally remembered his earlier conversation with Dick. Make sure you have a way to decompress, he said, softly. You know how workaholic all of them are. Start easily. Make sure you have some way to just be Duke. Stay human. No matter what B says, the mission isn't owed everything. He admitted, darkly. Duke hummed thoughtfully. He actually told me the same thing. Said the thing he needed most from me was just to come back at the end of the day. Wally smiled in spite of himself. Looks like an old dog could learn new tricks, and all it took was several deaths, but he didn't say that. Continuing like Duke didn't say anything. Yeah, like Jason's got his books, and Roy and Corey too. Duke's got his animals and drawing. Tim's got Con and... He hesitated. Coffee, Wayne Enterprises, tormenting Roz. Jeez, maybe we need to get him more hobbies. He has game nights with Riddler, Duke mused. And Dick has you? Wally elected to ignore Tim's chosen hobby, and only answered the second part. Yeah, well, along with being Big Bird to all of you, I'd try my best, though. Tim told me he once watched you strip him out of the bat suit. Okay, that makes it sound way worse than it was, Wally cried, his face warm. He normally wears a shirt under there. Duke just laughed. When the silence stretched, Wally pushed himself to his feet, knees crackling satisfyingly. He stretched. Duke didn't move to rise with him. I think I want to start journaling, write down their stories. But not just them. All of you guys. All of you guys are so incredible. I don't want to forget any of it. The distant lights of Laramie reflected in his eyes. Wally smiled, holding his hand out to the teen. The teen with such a burning urge to do good that he mourned a man long after his death simply because he cared to. You're pretty incredible yourself. Want to pick some up on the way back? I know a good Staples in Chicago that's 24/7. Duke let him pull him to his feet, casting one last look at the clouds overhead. to the stars ducking away behind them. Yeah, let's do that. Chapter 6. Cass. Dick, I'm serious. I can cancel. I'm sure she'll understand, Wally argued, frowning up at the darkening clouds overhead. His boyfriend sounded exasperated over the phone. Walls, I promise I'm fine. This might be your best bet with Cassie anyway. She needs a quiet night for her test. Not much chiller than a summer storm. Even the criminals can't stand getting wet. Gotham was due a storm, one that would sweep through the city and right over its sister, Bloodhaven. And Wally was on a roof, prepared to play a game with Cass for her trial. It wasn't that Wally didn't trust his boyfriend to handle himself in a storm. Dick was a fully capable vigilante and adult who had been going to therapy and getting better at coping with his triggers. He wasn't even going to be in the rain. Wally hadn't even had to insist he take the night off. Something about being really sore from training with Hal. But none of that could sway the bad feeling in his gut as he glared up at the promised heavy rain. Wally was just about to call it off and run home anyway, when Dick continued. Besides, I've got Damien. I'm not alone, KF. Plus, Cass says she'll be done with you in a few hours. The storm probably won't have even reached Blood by the time you're back. When has Gotham weather ever been predictable? Are you saying you don't trust Damie to keep me company, Walls? Dick said with a smirking pout, too loud to only be talking to him. Wally grimaced. That's playing dirty, Grayson. He let out a sigh, taking a breath before he pushed more. Dick was, of course, logically correct. He always was. But if there was anything Wally knew about his bird, logic was rarely on Dick's side. The arm that wasn't holding his phone spasmed slightly, and he clenched his fist. I just want to make sure you're okay, Dickie. I'm really not liking the look of this storm, he said, carefully, not wanting to upset Dick anymore, knowing that an actual fight would only make the night harder for both of them. Dick's voice was soft against his ear. I know, Walls, but I swear I'll be okay. Just have fun with Cass. I'll see you in a few hours, and we can cuddle then. Deal? When Wally hesitated, Dick smiled. Plus, I think Cass has been waiting for you. What? She's not even... But, of course, logic also wasn't a fan of Wally. Or at least, Cass sure seemed to enjoy defying it whenever she could. Because out of the darkness that he swore was empty before, the woman emerged, eyes smiling over her mask. Bye, Walls. Love you. I want him back in one piece, Cass, Dick called, delaying hanging up just long enough for Wally to also shoot back with his own goodbye and love. Cass skipped over to him, waving slightly. Hello. Hiya, Cass. How are you doing? Wally asked, trying to shake off his worry for Dick. His boyfriend should be fine. Good. Ready? Wally gave her a thumbs up. Sure am. Dick said you wanted to play a game? She nodded, glancing up at the faint light of the moon through the clouds. Until sunrise. Okay? What's the game? His arm spasmed again, though this time he clasped down on his other hand, massaging it still. Cass didn't question his movement, though she certainly noticed it. After a beat, she got closer, tapping him on the nose. Tag. His stomach dropped. 10-second head start. And then she was gone, disappearing back into the darkness, and likely over the side of the roof, before he'd even properly processed what she said. He glanced at his phone. Sunrise was still 5 hours away. Oh, fuck, he said loudly, ignoring the way his arm twitched painfully. This was fine. He could handle a few hours of tag across Gotham roofs, even against someone as talented as Cass. He shook off the growing heaviness in the back of his mind, as her 10-second head start had expired. Wally was off the tall building and scanning the nearby ones in an instant, going as fast as he could to search each and every one for any sign of Cass. This was his best bet. Despite being an assassin, there was only so far Cass could have gone in 10 seconds. If he could tag her now, he would just have to spend the rest of his night on the opposite end of the city from her. Easy. But he only made it through maybe a dozen rooftops before he stumbled, his stomach suddenly churning, the world slamming back into normal speed as he leaned against a building's ventilation system, heaving. The clawing numbness of the speed force leached at his back, and Wally fought off the urge to vomit. This was fine. Fine. After a particularly close heave, Wally let out a gulp, shaking his head to stave off the blurriness at the edges of his vision. Maybe Barry had a point about overdoing it. The episodes had started up again not long after his test with Babs, though that was probably because he was being more active in the city to get himself in their good books. Really, it was probably still less than he'd handled, patrolling as Barry's sidekick. But the sudden change was doing numbers on his sleep schedule. Oh, and on his tenuous grip on himself against the lulling rush of the speed force. Perfectly fine. Normal. Yep. Maybe he should have told Dick about this. Shakily, he righted himself, glancing around at Gotham rooftops. Cass could be anywhere at this point, and if he couldn't rely on his speed to slow her down, he'd just have to be very, very meticulous. All he had to do was tag her once. Then he could just avoid her, and chill and maybe ignore the numbness tickling his ribs. Wally sped off, much slower this time. He grimaced, tensing against the push of the speed force. It was like trying to hold back a tide with just a plank of wood, energy seeping through his fingers and pooling at his feet. Eventually, though, the creeping around his ankles seemed to subside, and it became easier to ignore. He searched for maybe an hour, skidding from rooftop to rooftop, for any sign of the girl. Occasionally, he would pause, eyes scanning the darkness for any hint of movement. One time, he even accidentally tackled Spoiler out of the air. Eventually, he spotted her. Cass was sitting on top of a short water tower, legs dangling happily over the edge, overlooking a theater. Wally grinned triumphantly, speedily taking the long way around the block, approaching the tower from behind. Only when he reached the roof, Cass was gone. Damn it! Wally panted, quickly scanning the scenery for any sign of her. Thankfully, Cass seemed to be getting sloppy, or was feeling merciful, since he caught sight of her slipping behind a billboard just a few streets down. Ignoring the painful twitch in his legs, he kicked off the roof after her, foregoing subtlety for the sake of speed. A little nausea would be worth catching her, after all. Despite himself, he smiled as he chased her down, letting out a little whoop as he landed beside the billboard. He rounded the corner, already expecting her disappearing act, and scanning the surroundings for her next spot. A sliver of gold was maybe 300 yards in front of him, highlighted by the streetlights. It was in the direction of Wayne Tower. Wally caught up quickly, pausing at the edge of the building. Cass was swinging 50 feet in the air, grappling towards the top of the tower. Even slowed, she was looking back at him with a smile in her eyes. This was his chance! He sped up and around the tower, the wind rushing past as he ascended. From this height, he could probably have tried to tackle her out of the air, but that wasn't exactly advisable. Instead, he perched right next to where her grapple gun had connected, waiting happily for her to come to him. Only she didn't. A sinking feeling in his gut, Wally glanced over the edge, confirming his suspicion. Cass was gone. Again. You were in mid-air! Where did you go? He yelled into the night, glaring down at the offending bright lights of the city below. With a sigh, Wally stepped down towards the wider part of the roof, heaving big breaths of air, while he let his heart rate slow a little. Okay, so this wasn't working. In short of kidnapping one of the other bats, it wasn't like he had any greater ways to lure Cass in. Whether he really had no other options, or if his brain had stopped firing on all cylinders to ignore the droning of the speed force, Wally wasn't sure. What he was sure of was that he would rather run around pointlessly all night than give up if there was even a chance he could beat Cass fair and square. He was having fun, damn it. Tag hadn't been fun in years. Then the clouds broke, and rain started pouring down. Cass frowned from where she was scrambling up the roof. Wally had been lagging as the game went on. Part of her was surprised he hadn't tried to tap out, even as the rain got worse and made it even harder to find her. Really, he'd only gotten as close as she'd let him. That same part of her was pleased at his determination, and let herself have fun avoiding his pursuit. She liked the older hero. He was almost always honest and never lied about important things. He never tried to forget or ignore her, even when she made it easy to. Plus, he was good to Dick, and good for him. She was pretty sure the speedster knew that Dick's jaw always unclenched when he saw Wally, in awe and joy, but vowed to tell him later anyway. For now, from what she could see through the rain and the distance, Wally was struggling. There was roughly 5 minutes before sunrise, so she supposed it made sense he was getting desperate. Still, watching him try and pull himself after her was hard. His hands were shaking, cold. His face was scrunched up with more than just frustration and exhaustion. His eyes were squinting and unfocused. She decided to end the game early when his legs slipped out from under him, leaving him tumbling onto the roof. He landed, not too gently, on his arms and stomach, groaning painfully. Wally laid there, red hair spread out in the pooling water. When Cass jumped down after him, she heard the heaving, gasping breaths he was letting out, like he was struggling to pull in air, though his mouth wasn't in the water, and his back didn't seem injured. She stood over him for a moment, waiting for his breathing to stabilize. Eventually, Wally rolled over, panting up into the air as he stared blankly up into the rain. "It's sunrise," he said, tiredly. Cass moved to stand over him, shielding at least his face from the rain. She offered him her hand. Wally smiled at her, green eyes still clouded. He accepted, allowing her to pull him up, and into a sitting position. "You pass," she replied, simply, reaching into her belt to retrieve the snack bars Tim told her to bring. Blueberry-flavored, apparently. Wally's face lit up, accepting the food, ignoring the rain pouring down around them. "You're officially my favorite, Cass." It looked like he hadn't eaten all night. Perhaps he hadn't. After finishing his first, and starting his second, he quirked an eyebrow at her. "I didn't win," he confirmed. She shook her head. "You were not meant to, but you did not give up, even when you knew you would lose. So, you pass." Wally continued eating as she continued, shuffling to sit beside him. The warmth she was used to from him was drowned out by the rain. His shoulders sank in exhaustion, joy painting his form as he enjoyed his food. It was the same joy he seemed to hold whenever around her big brother. "You cannot beat this family. We are made to outlast." She hesitated over the word, made, but no other offered itself. It didn't change her point, at least. "You will not beat him, but you won't give up." The words felt hard against her lips, clunky and unfit. Wally seemed to get it, though, or at least played off his confusion well. "Trust me, I know there's no getting ahead of you bats, but I decided a long time ago Dick was my forever. If he needs me, I'll be there." There was only truth in the tilt of his jaw, and sincerity in his eyes, like there always was. But Jason had insisted on proving the point. Wally was good for Dick. He had never been anything else. Cass rose to her feet, pointlessly shaking some of the water from her hair. The rain still hadn't lessened. "Come on, let's join Damien." She gripped the speedster by the shoulders, pulling him to stand beside her. Only Wally quickly slumped against her, legs scrambling for purchase. The brief clarity in his eyes had slipped out again, knees bumping together, head leveling with hers, despite his height. "Oh fuck, everything's jelly," he mumbled. Concern laced itself in her shoulders as she held the man up, quickly tapping a pattern into her comm set. "We have a ride." Perfectly on cue, a car honked from far below. Moments later, Red Hood grappled up onto the building. The annoyed fold of his arms, not enough to hide the way. His gaze worriedly scanned over Wally for any injuries. "Chauffeur at your service?" he grumbled, helping take the man from her arms and into his own. Dick should probably stop picking at his blanket before he completely frayses him. Its threads were starting to snap under his fingernails, itching them apart. It was better than scratching at his arms, at least. No one had really liked that habit. Thunder slammed outside his apartment, and his hands clenched momentarily. On the floor, a distance away, Damien's pencil stilled in a way that meant he was certainly watching Dick. He was cold. Had been since the storm had woken him up, grasping for the familiar body beside him. But he'd been alone. It had only taken 2 thumps of the storm against his window before he'd wrestled the sweaty sheets off of him and onto the floor. The normally comfortable and warm bed seemed to cling to his shoulders as he escaped out of the bedroom. Damien had stumbled out of the guest room after a few minutes, finding Dick nursing a bowl of oatmeal. Despite his attempts to get the boy to go back to bed, Damien had merely tutted and started cutting up strawberries. He'd kept himself at a distance, at least, conjuring a mix of gratitude and guilt within Dick. Did he want to pick up his littlest brother and thank him for his gentle care? Yes. Did he know since the moment he'd woken up that all he'd be able to feel was the clammy heat between them that leached at his skin? Also yes. So Damien went tragically unhugged, and the boy seemed to understand. If the bowl of blueberries and strawberries that had appeared next to him an hour ago was any indication. Now the two were clustered in front of the TV. Some old soap opera playing that was a little too loud for the early hour to try and drown out the storm. It wasn't working, but it took at least part of his brain off the night. Dick was on his feet and halfway to the door before he even registered hearing the knock. "Big brother," Cass greeted brightly when he swung the door open. "Cass, Jay, hey, how'd—" Then he laid eyes on Wally, sopping wet and bundled in a dripping hoodie to hide the red suit poking out. His skin was pale, and hair stuck to his head in streaks. His legs seemed unstable under him as he leaned on Jason, green eyes mostly closed as he tried to smile. Dick thought he looked beautiful. "Very tired," Cass explained. Jason rolled his eyes. "She kept him running all night. Let me in, he's getting heavy." "I got him," Dick said, barely stopping himself from grabbing Wally right there and sitting in the hallway cuddling him. "Are you sure?" Jason started, hesitantly. Dick ignored his weird concern, hoisting Wally into a bridle carry and holding him close. Even though the water soaked his pajamas, Wally was warm against him. His heartbeat was close to Dick's, steady and real in there. He still smelled like the cheesy maple shampoo Babs had bought Dick for his birthday, that Wally pretended to not steal. Dick's hand slid up along Wally's back and tangled in his love's soaked hair. A plume of warmth in his chest. Wally's skin seemed to buzz under his touch, electric and alive, and teasing and joyful, despite the cold water soaking his chest. Dick smiled, breathing in the feeling of Wally finally back in his arms. His boyfriend squished his face against Dick's chest, smiling sleepily. "Hi. Hi. Let's get you to bed, huh?" Wally frowned. "No, couch. We can cuddle there." "It'll be a lot warmer in bed," Dick offered playfully, not really caring where they sat as long as he wouldn't have to let go. "Richard, is everything— Oh, West. Hello, Cassandra. Todd," Damien greeted, coming from around the corner. His eyes paused briefly on Dick before looking disdainfully down at the water pooling at their feet. Dick thought he heard Jason mumble something like, "Oh, she gets her first name. Okay, I see how it is," before Wally lightly smacked his chest with his knuckles. "Couch," he insisted. Dick rolled his eyes, readjusting his grip, and feeling a new surge of water under his fingers. "Fine, but let's at least get you changed. You're soaking me too." He turned to Jason and Cass, who lingered at the door. "You two staying? I Think I still have some clothes for you two, too? In the guest room. He caught Jason's nod as he slipped into his bedroom, boyfriend in tow, who he reluctantly settled on the carpet. No need to punish their bed by making it smell like Gotham rain. Dick quickly retrieved them a set of comfy clothes, and began the process of very unsexily stripping his half-asleep boyfriend. He had just finished helping Wally into shorts when the redhead gripped his face. "Dick?" Wally's voice was rough from exhaustion, but still managed to sound like the sweetest sound in the world. He was smiling dopily when he responded. "Mm-hmm. You're tired." "Huh?" Wally's eyes narrowed a little. "You've got eye bags. Did the storm—" He felt his mood drop at the reminder, leaning forward with a sigh. Dick was too tired to lie. "Yeah, a little. It's okay, Walls. I'm just glad you're here." He leaned in for a kiss, but Wally drew back, concern in his eyes. "Dickie, you sure? It's okay if you don't want touch right now." Dick got close, leaning over Wally so they were almost nose to nose. "Wally, the only thing I have wanted since I woke up was to hold you," he said sincerely, hoping to convey a fraction of the desperation that was still clawing at his arms. "So, unless you're not okay with that, can I please?" Wally examined him for a second, but smiled. "I'm all yours. Do your worst." Dick responded by grabbing Wally around the waist, pulling him back into his chest and tangling their legs together. He pressed his face into Wally's hair and let himself breathe in the energy radiating off him. The man in his arms let out a giggle, tucking his head into Dick's chin, curling up against the arm around his stomach. If he thought a soaked Wally was nice to hold, a dry one was heavenly. The persistent buzz that only Wally ever seemed to give off was even nicer warm. Whether it was a speedster thing, or Wally simply assigned by the universe to give off a calming frequency, Dick didn't know, or care, as long as he got to enjoy it. The steady heartbeat against his, the muscle rippling under his fingers, the gentle shaking of Wally's hands. Dick cracked his eyes open, glancing down at the man slowly breathing against his chest. He reached blindly for a moment, finding one of Wally's fingers. It was definitely shivering. "Wally? His boyfriend hummed sleepily. "You're shivering." Wally made a noise of protest. "I just spent hours in the rain, of course I'm cold." Only Wally was as warm as he ever was. Dick drew back, so he could get a better look at him. Wally tilted his head up to look at him, pouting and blinking blearily, and quickly. His pupils seemed to be struggling to stay on Dick. Briefly centering, each blink only to drift again. "My turn, Wally. Are you okay?" he asked, clearly in the same tone he used whenever Tim was being avoidant. After a beat, Wally seemed to give up, closing his eyes and returning to his spot against Dick's chest. "I'm fine," he mumbled. "Just having a hard time focusing." A chill crept up Dick's neck. "Is it SF-related?" He hated the thought of Wally getting stuck in the Speed Force again, even if Barry had assured both of them about how unlikely it was. Even if Wally could probably escape on his own at this point. Even if Wally hated the idea even more than himself. Wally was silent for a bit, before slowly nodding. "Just the numbing." Dick tightened his grip instinctually, rubbing circles into Wally's waist. The numbing was the way Wally described the feeling of the Speed Force pulling at him, though neither he nor his therapist seemed to be sure how much of it was a trauma response and how much was the actual energy trying to steal his boyfriend from him. But at least Dick knew how to deal with it. "Warm or cold, babe?" "Warm." Dick pressed his lips to Wally's temple gently, giving him a squeeze. He slid him off his lap, leaning him against the foot of their bed. Quickly, Dick retrieved a blanket from their drawer, one that had a built-in heater against the back and carried a comfortable weight. He draped it over his boyfriend, swaddling Wally as tightly as he dared. The redhead let out a happy sigh, melting back against him. After a beat, "Sorry." Dick tangled his hand in Wally's hair, playing with one of the still wet curls. "For what?" "Didn't mean to make you take care of me," he murmured. "You're not making me do anything, Walls. You're having your bad day." Dick smiled into his hair. "Our days can be bad together. You're still important to me, even if today sucks, he said affirmatively. When Wally didn't respond, he glanced down. You do know that, right, Wally? Wally snored softly against him. He snorted. Fine, but we're talking about this later. With that final word, he tucked his arm under Wally's legs, lifting them gently. He made his way out of their bedroom, joining his siblings gathered around the couch. With the grace of someone running on 2 hours of sleep, carrying a weight deader than the Dead Sea, Dick let Wally's legs splay out across Jason's lap, giving his brother a look. The other man scowled, but pulled the blanket to cover Wally too, turning back to the TV. Someone, probably Damien, had changed the channel to a documentary on iguanas. Wally's head was in his lap. Cass had settled onto the love seat to his left. Damien was at the coffee table near her, and Jason was Wally's pillow on the couch. And the storm was stuck outside. Perfection. Dick leaned back against the couch, his hand once again playing with Wally's hair. His family didn't say anything, though Damien's eyes definitely flicked over to the body in his lap. Over the soft music of the documentary, Dick's eyes drifted back to his snoozing boyfriend. He reached around and tucked the blanket in a little tighter. His mind drifted back to their conversation, frowning. What had Wally meant? Had he been hiding his own bad days to take care of Dick? He wouldn't put it past him. No matter how much they claimed otherwise, they never quite broke their habit of downplaying their injuries. Dick knew he depended on Wally. He wasn't ashamed to admit that coming back to him every night was one of the sweetest part of his days and nights. And Wally depended on him, right? Or at least, he knew he could. He grimaced, shelving the thought away. Catastrophizing wasn't the solution. Okay, start at the problem. Wally's speed was getting the better of him. What did he know? Wally only started shutting down when he ran either too fast or too long. When did that happen? Obviously, Cass kept him running for 5 hours straight. That was definitely too long, but one night wasn't normally enough. He'd been patrolling, right? Trying to get Bloodhaven used to him. How long were those normally? Were they every night? He'd started them after his test with Babs, since there were a bunch of articles about his activity after that. Had he been doing that ever since? Why hadn't Dick noticed? Why was he doing them in the first place? Sure, impressing Bloodhaven was important for operating there, but every day was a lot, especially since Wally had only been back as Flash for a year. It was probably a good idea to slow down. Blood wasn't going anywhere, after all. In the meantime, he should talk to Tim and Damien, make sure they aren't planning on running Wally ragged anymore. No matter what his amazing boyfriend said about trying to prove himself, this game wasn't worth his health. I'm all yours. All the time I have. Every speedster second. It's yours. Yours. Suddenly, Dick's head was ringing with all the ways Wally had confessed his love, his devotion, his place as Dick's, and he'd encouraged it, relished in keeping Wally. This game wasn't worth Wally's health. But did he think that? The winds outside suddenly turned, pelting the window with a stream of droplets thundering against the glass. Dick's hand tightened instinctually, and Wally let out a pained sound. He forced his grip away from his boyfriend's head. Shit, I'm sorry, Walls. Wally didn't open his eyes, reaching his hand up to softly pat Dick's hand before nuzzling into his legs. A clear pardon. For Dick hurting him. Something in his mind was suddenly slotting into place. Wally would never tell him no. Would never protect himself. Would never not forgive Dick for anything he'd done. Suddenly, he felt sick. The only reason he wasn't bent over a trash can was because it would disturb Wally. Wally was the kindest, most patient, best man he'd ever known, who he was lucky every day to have met and gotten back, who would let Dick do anything he wanted. His hands hovered near Wally's hair, part of him itching to continue enjoying its warmth, the other part terrified at the prospect of hurting Wally anymore. Thunder boomed outside the window, but Dick hardly noticed as he took in every inch of his boyfriend. Wally's shoulder raised easily and steadily each breath. His face content, squished against Dick's thighs. His bare feet shifted under the blanket, still cast over Jason's legs. He seemed fine. Distantly, he could feel Cass's eyes on him. After a moment, Jason stood up, carefully wiggling out from under Wally's legs and dropping them back onto the couch. "Come on, brat," he said, softly, gesturing to where Damien was watching them carefully. "You're the only one whose tastes I trust. Let's find lunch." It was a clear excuse for them to leave. But Damien gave in after a moment, standing and grabbing a notebook from his bag. When the door was closed behind them, Cass advanced, sitting in front of the couch and looking between him and Wally, and his hovering hands. Deep breaths. Dick automatically complied, forcing his breathing to slow. When had it gotten fast? "He did very well," she stated. Dick hummed, not trusting his voice. "You will be safe with him." I know, and if that wasn't the truth, how many more bullets would Wally take for him? He'd already taken an explosion for Jason, ran himself freezing for Cass. How many? "He doesn't hold you back. He supports me to do whatever I want." Dick's voice was heavy. He wondered if Cass was reading off him. "Is that bad?" she asked. "It's terrifying," he admitted. "I could hurt him, and he would just let me, or forgive me, and he'd let me destroy him." Tears pricked at his eyes. Wally, another good thing in his life that he didn't deserve. How long until he wasted him? How long until Wally would succumb to Dick's poison? "That's what you do for us." Dick's head shot up to meet her eyes. "What?" Her gaze was steady, looking at him earnestly. "Us. Your family. You're like that with us." "You taught me that was what love is. A door to hurt, but one that is used only to help. He is vulnerable to you, as you are vulnerable to us, but we do not use that to hurt each other." Slowly, with plenty of time to pull away, she guided his hand back to Wally's hair. The redhead relaxed into his touch. Something warm bloomed in Dick's chest. "He will be safe with you." A tear trickled down his cheek. "You really think so?" Cass nodded. "He is devoted, but so are you. You will not hurt him." Dick didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't sure if he really trusted himself with Wally's love, but he knew better than thinking it was going anywhere. When Wally loved, it was made to last. "Talk to him. He will listen." "Thanks, Cassie. When did you get so wise?" Her face was sweet as cake, pushing at her cheeks to show her dimples. "You taught me. Be happy with him." Dick gave her a shaky nod. Cass leaned back against the couch, her head resting a few inches away from Wally's arm. He forced himself to follow her lead and relax, closing his eyes as his hand once again peacefully carted through Wally's locks. At some point, Jason and Damien returned, a platter of sandwiches and cookies in their hands. The smell of roast ham and tomatoes filled the apartment, only rivaled by the maple-scented man in his lap. The rest of the day passed uneventfully. The storm broke after another 2 hours. Jason and Cass returned to Gotham for patrol that evening, but Damien insisted on spending another night. And so, the two had dragged a still sleeping Wally into a game of Monopoly. Damien won, before wrapping up for the night. "How are you? Still tired?" Dick probed with a smile, throwing a blanket over Wally. Wally stuck out his tongue. "You're the one who's been baking me all day." He rolled his eyes, leaving his boyfriend to get comfortable, while he went to wish Damien a good night. The boy was running his blanket between his fingers. Zitka the elephant on his nightstand. "Hey, Damie," Dick greeted, flopping onto the guest bed. Damien scowled, but pulled in his legs, letting Dick get comfortable. "Thanks for keeping me company today." His scowl faded, blue eyes turning away. His mouth pinched. "Got something on your mind, baby bat?" The dam seemed to break. "Richard, why? You never protest to West's touch." Dick paused, sitting up on the bed. Damien's face wasn't stony. His brow was creased in the same way as when he was trying to understand some social convention. Yeah, I don't, he replied simply. Why? The rule is only you may initiate touch on stormy days, and I have respected that. Cassandra and Todd also avoid contact. He is not even family. Why do you tolerate his exception? His voice was creeping towards shouting at the end. Damien, it's... His throat closed. Not much, but as much as he wanted to explain why Wally's touch, his energy, seemed to be the only thing that didn't feel like cold hands clawing at his arms and suit, he couldn't put that on Damien. I know it seems weird, he settled. Do not talk down to me, Richard. I know your situation, and I know to respect your boundaries. His voice was clipped, like it was when he was reporting to Bruce. I merely wish to know why he doesn't need to. Dick laid his hand on his little brother's shoulder. Because things are different with Wally. Damie, it's not anything he's doing that you, Jason, Cass, or anyone else aren't. Wally, he's been part of my life for so long. He knows more about me than probably anyone else. Damien's eyes flashed. So you fear rejecting him? Is this blackmail? I will... Damien, no, Dick said, slightly alarmed. This isn't... I don't know how I can explain it, but I feel safe with him. He's been a source of comfort for me for so much of my life that even with... His throat tightened. He's an exception. He just is. His Robin examined Dick's face, narrowing his eyes. Silently, he retrieved his cup of water from the nightstand, offering it to Dick. He drank it gratefully. I promise it isn't about you or anyone else in the family. I wish I could just make the rest of you guys exceptions too, I really do. But that's easier said than done. I'm sorry I can't give you a better explanation. Do not apologize for what you cannot control. Damien turned away again, the brief anger gone from his eyes. When he turned back to Dick, his look was the same one he gave to hurt civilians. So you are better with West? I am, he answered easily. So you need him? Yeah, just like I need you guys. Just because I love him doesn't mean I love my family any less. To prove his point, Dick opened his arms, invitingly. Damien shuffled into them, with barely a protest, only scoffing slightly when Dick pressed a kiss to his forehead. After a moment of getting to hug his baby bat, Dick asked, Are you okay? I think I understand better. Good night, Richard. Dick took the dismissal for what it was, wrapping his arms around him. Night, Damie. I love you. Damien didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. Not after the soft look he sent after Dick as he shut the door. Notes. Just to be clear, everything here, I hope, is accurate to real life. Everything from Matthew Shepard to the play, The Laramie Project, is true and deserves to be told and remembered. I highly suggest anyone here to look into the story and history. As for why it's here in this fic, to be honest, it just kinda happened. I was in my school's production, and so it has always had a special place in my memory, along with being associated with the stars. I do legit go to Laramie just to watch the stars, and I am projecting onto Wally. As this chapter developed, it turned into a pseudo-tribute to Matthew Shepard. So thank you, Matthew, for helping me find my own voice and better understand myself. I hope I told it right. Background thing for this recording session. When I sat down to record, one of my webkins fell off of the shelf behind me. Because we collect webkins, we have more than we can remember the names for, right? So instead of trying to remember them all, we write them down on the tags on the stuffed animals, right? And this guy, he fell on me from above, and he doesn't have a name. It's just a Webkins panda. I'll post a picture of him alongside this upload, and you can tell me what his name should be. That's bullshit, okay? Because I Playing air hockey. It's super easy to knock the puck out of the ring with air hockey, okay? We used to do it all the time. Dr. Clement? In all fairness, I did the same shit the first time I went any place that was flat. I hate that. That's the worst thing ever. I had a friend, I'm not joking about this, Bible Belt. I had a friend whose parents thought I was going to turn their kid gay. I'm not even near the window anymore, goddamn. Wally, you can't say shit like that. Oh my god, my heart. Let's watch my voice disintegrate while I try and do a high-pitched voice for Cass. My father kept telling his friends and family members that if given a choice, I would choose a fruit over a candy bar. He proved his point by getting both a fruit and a candy bar and offering them to me, and I was like, fuck yeah, an apple! And I took the apple.